And ACT Party leader David Seymour is with me. Good morning to you, David.
Good morning, Chris.
Good to see you. Now, submissions on this hate speech law proposals, they close on Friday. This consultation period has been pretty fast and frankly dangerous, isn't it, when you've only got a couple more days left?
Well, I think the whole time frame has been really weird, to be honest. So if you go back, the terrible tragedy in Christchurch, March 15, 2019, over 2 years ago now, the government said it would do something like this. Unlike the rushed firearm laws, they didn't actually act. Labor goes into the 2020 election, and in October that year, they say, we are going to ban hate speech in some form. The Royal Commission on Christchurch reports back in November. It's now 18 months since the tragedy. They haven't actually done anything. And then the start of this year, Labor say, we've got to ban it because of the Royal Commission. So none of this timeline makes sense. They've never known what they're doing or why. Is it because of the tragedy? Is it because of the Royal Commission? What exactly are they banning? And then at the end of it, they say, oh, well, we better ask the public, over 2 years after we've started talking about this, what they think. So I don't think the communication from the government is sincere. I don't think the consultation is real. The only good news about this is they don't know what they're doing either.
And that appears to be the case when you look at what RNZ was putting out last week, suggesting that they couldn't even get in touch with the minister to discuss this just a week out from submissions closing. Of course, when the minister did appear recently on Q&A, it was a bit of a disaster, to be fair. Do you actually think, though, that throwing somebody in jail is actually going to prevent hate speech? Because that's essentially what the government is saying.
If anything, it will probably make it worse because in a free and open society, people are basically just testing ideas every day, and stupid things tend to get shot down pretty quickly. You look at that guy, I can't remember his name, David Ireland or something, used to say that there was no Holocaust. Incredibly stupid thing to say. There's so much clear evidence that terrible thing happened. But he was never shut down, censored, jailed. He was just destroyed because his argument wasn't credible, and fundamentally because people are smart enough to make up their own mind based on the facts. But if you don't have that opportunity, then actually hateful and stupid ideas will germinate underground. You look at the guy who started this all off, that guy from Australia, the terrorist, he actually was on 8chan. Now, 8chan is, so I hadn't heard of it before this, it's where all the people that got kicked off 4chan went. Now, some people might have heard of 4chan, that's where all the people that got kicked off Facebook went. So, layers of censorship force this discussion underground. And all of a sudden, you've got some idiot running around shooting people because he's developed these crazy ideas. So if anything, the chilling effect of banning hate speech, sadly, will be to drive debate underground, allow ideas that are stupid to germinate and grow without proper discussion or destruction as that they deserve, and we'll have more hate speech, sadly.
David, those who want this legislation would say, though, this law is going to protect minorities. But if anything, the reverse could happen, couldn't it? And I want to pick you up on something that lawyer Stephen Price said, that hate speech laws are often used to prosecute the very minorities it is designed to protect. And he points to countries like France and European countries where hate speech laws have been used actually against Muslim imams and gay people who are attacking religions who are attacking them.
Well, free speech is the ultimate minority right. People who are sort of in the big middle, the popular people, they don't need protections from the right to free speech, or they don't need the right to free speech to protect them. They are saying things that are already widely accepted and popular. It's always the people on the fringe. I always use Kate Shepherd, who at least at one point was a fringe figure. Her ideas, while I think they're pretty standard now, weren't always openly accepted. She had the right to free speech, and she was a very good debater. If you ever have time to read some of her speeches, she's arguably one of our best orators, at least in terms of what was written down. So, free speech has to be seen as a minority right. The fact this government thinks it will protect minorities is actually denying the possibility that people who are categorized into a minority might have opinions they want to share too.
David, it seems to me, though, that hate speech laws are already coming into play in New Zealand right now. There are plenty of campaigns going on in this country to silence views who deviate from, say, Twitter, and they've been quite successful. I point to the billboard, I think, in Wellington, here in Christchurch, with the Court Theatre, an actor being told they can't play a supposed transgender character. That was an act of violence against the trans community. We're getting a lot of these Twitter campaigns, for better or worse, and they appear to be being quite successful. They are shutting down freedom of expression. What's your take on that?
Well, I think there's two separate things going on here. Number one, what's happening in the intellectual climate in the universities and all of the sort of surrounding society that is infected by the ideas that seep out of universities. We've got a big problem there. This idea of postmodernism, that there is no rights for individuals. There are only categories of people, and intersectionality sort of sums up how many oppressed identities you have and therefore the value of your opinions. All this stuff is just crazy. They believe there's no true reality that binds us all together as humans who have universal dignity. Instead, these people who believe in postmodernism and critical studies and, theory, queer theory, post-colonial theory. There's even fact studies now in some American universities where they argue that, fat people are oppressed because the world has been built in the image of the thin, and that, doctors who tell people it's healthier to carry less weight are actually just carrying out an oppressive neoliberal Western narrative. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up.
I know you're not. The thing is, if you're constantly oppressed, the thing is, if you're constantly oppressed, that creates, ironically, a victimhood status, which creates an identity for yourself, which sometimes in this country the media like to play off, don't they? In they go to the nearest person who claims they're oppressed.
Yeah, well, this is a widespread cultural problem that has come out of the universities, and people who are liberals, and I think most New Zealanders in the sort of wider sense are liberals, that they believe there's universal human rights. Everyone has the right to think their thoughts and speak their mind, and everyone has an equal inherent value regardless of their identity. If that's your basic set of beliefs, then you're a liberal, and liberalism, that set of ideas, have done more for human welfare and prosperity than any other system of belief in the history of humankind. And we have to stand up for it against all this crazy postmodern crap that's coming out of the universities. That's the first issue. The second issue is, what is the government's response? Now, I would like to have a government that is actually promoting liberalism, promoting free speech, promoting the fundamental dignity of every person. Unfortunately, we've got a government in New Zealand that wants to join the cancel culture, wants to join the Twitter mob, join the people with the change.org petitions. And the government's actually going to make the problem worse. And that's a serious, serious difficulty.